Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon. Good
afternoon.
afternoon, gentlemen.
All right, all right. We are back. We are back. What a couple of weeks we've had so far, man. But we're
Yes.
back right here. Good to see you all again.
Good to see each and every one of
Yeah,
you.
it has been a minute since we have been together in this context.
Right. Yeah, a
Well,
lot has been going on here at the I guess at the pastors roundtable and within the church. So I guess today we're
definitely.
going to deal with that a little bit. But hey, listen, um and Pastor Paul, do we say share now or do we wait? I'm kind of out of practice now, man.
Yeah, wow. I think we do it now, brother. Let's do it now. This is
Okay.
going to be an interesting conversation where we're just kind of debriefing the last few weeks where lots of things have been going on since we've been back together, since we have been apart. Um,
Right.
from the GC session to the called session to we had something go down yesterday. We might mention, but tell them, Dion, tell them what they need to do.
Well, listen, this is the time you need to share. Listen, we are here on this platform, and we want to have this great conversation with you. And the only way to have a robust conversation is if we have more people on the chat just chiming in. And so, in order to get more people on the chat, we got to share this feed so that others can chime in and have a conversation with us together.
Yeah, and we want to invite you to talk to each other as well. Sometimes you don't, and we notice this from week to week that you guys end up, and so we want you to do that as we kind of give you our take on the past few weeks within the Adventist Church, within the world. Um, it's good to have Pastor Wade with us back again. He was with us when we were in called. Um,
Yes.
think the week before he was missing, but we're glad to have Pastor Wade back in the
Yes, yes. I'm just making sure that everything is working here. We are just so glad to be together. Now, some of you may not understand what we're talking about, but we actually had a show. I think Pastor Paul, you weren't with us, and then Pastor Dion wasn't with us, and then we went to GC. We went to General
Hmm.
Conference, and so I was at General Conference. We didn't have a show that week. Then we didn't have. Then we came to South Central Conference, and we had South Central Conference camp meeting. And I was to be there with my colleagues. I couldn't be there with my colleagues because I was at. I was dealing with the remnants of General Conference, the gift that kept on giving. Some of you may have heard I actually tested positive for COVID, so I could not join my colleagues. Could not join my colleagues there in South Central Conference. Then we left from South Central Conference and we gathered in Lexington for the call convention. And so we were at the call convention, and since then, my colleagues have gone home, and so this is the first time we've been back together on the PRT. On the PRT.
Right, right. So it's been a busy time into the swing of things and seeing the wonderful members there at the church today. A shout out goes to the Altamont Springs Church, and I just appreciate them so much. But just coming back, so we are back, and I know Pastor Paul had a busy day as well, and Pastor Wade. So always good to be
Yeah.
back here on the Pastors Roundtable, and I feel like saying where we make ministry relevant, resource, and
So
real. So
unreal. It was surely real. I give you that much. It was surely real. And
all right.
so we're
You got a
just giving
picture,
God
man?
praise. We sure giving
Okay.
God praise. So today, I would just want to welcome Daphne Bolden for joining us here. Dr. Morris Markel Jr., welcome. And Colleen Sinclair, welcome. Those are the ones that we've seen enter into the chat. Just enter where you are, where you're watching from, and so that we can give you a shout out this afternoon.
Hmm. That's
Yeah,
right.
I'm sitting here. People probably can tell I'm not in my normal space. But this road stuff, man, being on the road, packing up gear, having to unpack it. I didn't get in from called until late last night,
Mm.
and then having to do church and everything. So I'm sitting in my living room right now with kind of a makeshift setup. I got rained out at church, pouring rain.
Oh my.
Not rained out, but between the car and the building was a long way, and so I'm sitting here soaking wet in my living room. But
I
yeah, it's good
understand.
to be here. Be here.
Good to be
Um,
back. So
so where
listen,
we starting?
I
Let's
was
jump
going to
into
say
this thing.
what. Well, yeah, Pastor Paul, I was going to ask you, what's on the table, man? What's
Yeah,
on the
well,
table?
we talked a little bit about it already. We just want to debrief some of the things that have been taking place in our church over the past few months. And when I say church, I mean not just our individual churches, but the world church. With that general conference session that took place a few weeks ago back in St. Louis, we had a number of elections that took place at that meeting. We had some little tweaks and changes in policy, some bigger tweaks and
Mhm.
changes in policy that were voted. We'd like to have a little conversation about some of those. Some things were nice and easy. Other things were a little bit more controversial than others. We'd like to dip our toes in those waters today.
All right.
Then we had the opportunity to be at South Central Conference. So we want to talk about what that was like, being at the Great Oakwood University South Central Conference. Um, so we're going to talk about that. And then finally, we want to hit Called. Called was an awesome event
Hmm.
that just finished in Lexington, Kentucky. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Tell our viewers exactly what that is, because a lot of them probably have no clue what that was, what it was about.
So, so Pastor Paul, you told us what's on the table, but Pastor Wade, who's at the table, man?
Man,
Who's at the
today
table?
the PRT hosts, they are the ones at the table today. We just got word from our behind the scenes tech guy. We are 100 subscribers away from 1,000. 100. If we can get that 100 today, if today we have 61 people watching, we have 61 people watching. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube page, we invite you to head on over to YouTube and subscribe right now and share it with others. Let them know they need to subscribe so that we can get to that 1,000. Once we hit 1,000, oh, the things will happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but things will happen, and we'll be excited to share that with you. 100 more people, and we'll make it.
All right. All right. Well, hopefully we're going to get there soon and very soon. So we are here. We are at the table, gentlemen. Let's have a prayer and let's jump in.
Yeah. Let's pray.
All
Father,
right.
we
Let's
thank
pray.
you.
Father, we just want to.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
I was going to say, Father, we thank you for your
Father, we
love, your
just
mercy,
say,
and your grace. We ask you to now be with us as we have this conversation. It's my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
all right. Well, hopefully it will go away. All right. So where we start? We're starting general conference. Raj, you had some stuff that you wanted to
Yeah, so
bring up. You were actually there
Right.
at the convention in St. Louis. Talk
so
to us,
hopefully
Doc.
the
How did it go?
plan was, as you know, we actually PRT had a major piece in sharing what was happening at the general conference. For the last couple of years, we've only heard bits and pieces, and we began to hear what wasn't going to happen. And somehow at the PRT, in one of our production meetings, we said, "Hey, let's reach out to General Conference session management." And the session manager responded and said, "Hey, I'll come on PRT." And so he joined us. He shared
Yeah.
information. Individuals were like, "Wow, we didn't know that was happening." This was the place where a lot of stuff broke as to what was going to happen at GC. And so one of the things we hoped to have had happen was that we as PRT will be able to go and do a show from there. Well, that didn't happen. We could not get things in place. We couldn't get permissions to set up things like that. But we were able to get the Southern Union and the South Central Conference came together with the West Central African Division Communications Group, and we were able to do a show from GC. And so I had the privilege of joining the group there, and came together every evening. We did a recap show. And I have a little tidbit there from you, but I didn't know if you have any questions you wanted to share at this time, or your concept of how this thing came about.
Well, let me just say this. So the general conference, we know that they had to postpone it for several years. So finally, we were able to have the general conference. But Pastor Wade, talk to us a little bit before you go into the clip. Are we going to wait another 5 years for general conference, or are they doing something different for the next general conference session?
Well, our folks love to have things timed. We are very prophetic in our church, and we everything has to have a moment in time. And so, what they decided to do, we had general conference in 2022. They said they have to get back on the schedule. So every 5 years, so they're going to do general conference in 2025. So we're going to only have a 3 year session, and then we will begin. We'll have another general conference on the 2025, which would have been the normal general conference that we would have had for that year.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Henry, one of the things I'd like to say, though, even again before we get into that one of the things that struck me about this general conference, I've been going to general conference sessions since 1980. That was in Dallas. I think I was a tiny child. But
Teenager.
stop it.
It was just 80. It wasn't 68. It was 80.
1980. And I think I missed the one that was in Utrecht. Other than that, I've been to all of them. Now, going as an adult and as a college student, this was the first time that I spent as much time listening to the dialogue that happens on the floor regarding policy, regarding the agenda of what the meeting is actually about. And I think that was the technology aspect that brought that into play, being at home. Because when we're there in the city, we're out marching around, seeing the city, doing the exhibit halls, doing all the stuff. But to actually take the time, which many people did, of sitting down and actually listening to the dialogue and the conversation and even the debate at times over with the church struggling over issues that were dealt with, things about theology and identity and direction and policy. It was fascinating. It was very fascinating to see, to watch how and see how that develops. Differing opinions, opposing ideas, and yet seeing how that all materialized. It was just a fascinating thing to be able to watch online and through the technology. So,
Well,
yeah.
this particular general conference was so different because, as you shared, it was the only thing happening was the business session. They did not have the exhibit hall. They did not have any set of worships. They didn't have nothing else going on but the business session. So if you wanted to experience GC, all you had was the business session to listen to. And this is what they did. They started on Monday and they planned to finish on Thursday. So
Okay.
4 days, they did a morning business session, an afternoon business session, and a night business session. So you had
So,
3 business sessions each day.
yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really abbreviated, it was just compacted.
It was
Right.
compact. That's right. That's right. And so I think they did an awesome job in planning and putting things together, defining what goes where, how it was going to go, and they were and I take my hat off to the church. This was truly a hybrid meeting.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
and
right.
and pass and pass away. It was a hybrid meeting that was made possible, I would say, because of the impact of the pandemic. If we
Right.
did
Yes.
not have a pandemic, and we know the pandemic caused a lot of problems, and we never want to go through a pandemic like that. So much
Yeah.
damage and people lost their lives
Hmm.
because of the virus and so forth. What we do know that is that in a crisis, creativity happens,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
people are now pushed to use other resources so that people can still tune in to what's happening. So this hybrid is a result of the pandemic. And so,
Yeah.
like Pastor Paul, yeah, I was able to watch it, able to see the debates, and guess what? I was able to rewind too, right? So if I
Where,
get something, if
here's
I
the
have
question
to
though.
get
Were you able to vote? Did you vote? Not,
no, I couldn't vote, man.
Roger's point that made it such a hybrid thing is that we actually had delegates who were not on site,
Hmm.
delegates all over the world who were able to participate, to
Zoom.
vote, to speak to issues on the floor, but from their home country and from their living room. So, yeah, we've moved into a whole brand new world with some of this stuff. So, yeah,
So
kudos.
I have a clip. I have a clip I want us to
Yeah.
get to. This clip is of the show, from the show that I did on the first day. I'm
Okay.
speaking with the one of the delegates. So this is the communications director, Elder Louis Bakari. He is the communications director for the West Central African Division. And so we had a nice little back and forth, and he will bring up a couple of things that we'll talk about. Let's go to the clip.
So you're a delegate, right?
Yeah, I'm a delegate.
So you were able to get down on the floor. You were able to hear the reports live. Now,
Yes.
there was a report today given by the president of the General Conference.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about that report.
Yeah, it's a report from the president that emphasized on the mission of the church. A very, very brilliant report for me. And it shows how this church is a movement from America, Africa, Asia, Europe, from all the continents. We see a church moving. We see members involved in mission. We see people inspired. We see them creative the way they present the gospel message. But most importantly, what really drew my attention is what the media can do, the power that
Right.
God has placed in that tool. That's the media ministries, particularly the AWR ministry in Philippines, as we have witnessed the baptismal ceremony of that commander, the second commander in chief of the First Army of Philippines, Colonel Guevara Eric and the wife Leah.
That was today, right?
Yes, today. It
Oh,
was
okay.
a live baptismal ceremony, and these two were really impressed by the way the rebels, the former
The
Right.
rebels,
baptism.
accepted
Uh-huh.
the gospel
So
message
this is
through
the
the major
baptism. He's
ministries,
sharing.
and that
He's
was
sharing.
so
Bakari's
wonderful.
sharing
And when they
his
saw that, they said,
experience.
"What
This is the
type of
baptism
power is
that
that?
in
This
in the
wonderful
president's
power
report,
of God. We have
he
Okay.
experienced
actually
it." When they
had a
listened to the
live
message, they
baptism
couldn't resist.
of
And
a
this is the
colonel
baptismal
from the
ceremony of God.
Philippine
And it
army.
was really wow,
Wow.
wonderful.
Right.
It was
And
killed
So,
they
inside
saved that as a
the
representation
whole.
of the
But
church
I say,
growth
well,
that's
this water, would
happening.
it be
And so
hot
they
water or
brought
something?
they
But they
they
went
brought him
deep inside
here,
that water.
and
I
they
say, wow,
baptized him
that was
live
fantastic.
on the
That
And
floor
was
in the
it's
impactful.
midst of the
really, really
president's
great.
That
of
was
the midst of
impactful.
the
I
president's
had to text my
report.
president and I said, Mr. President,
So
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 let
wait,
me
so
let's go
pass
back.
away. Pass away.
Yeah.
So this was a live baptism in the president's report. So talk to us a little bit now. I mean, they just said this is the report. He baptizes folk, and then he gets back, he gets ready, and he comes back out and says some stuff, or he doesn't have anything. It was just all because that part I missed when I was.
Okay, so basically he stands up, he shares the report, he talks about what's happening around the world. Then he
Okay.
points out to the fact that AWR, Adventist World Radio, had this campaign in the Philippines. And so while they showed a video as part of his report, he went and changed. And then
Okay.
next thing you know, you see him over to the side of the stage, and he is in a robe. And next thing you know, he introduces it was
Hey,
masterfully done,
hey,
masterfully done.
Pastor Paul. I think I know constituency meetings are coming up, but it'll be nice, man, to have The president, man, in the pool baptizing some folk, man. I
So,
love
so,
it. I love that, man.
so I made a joke. I made a joke on the show
I
that
love it.
I text my president and told him that's
Here's my report. By the way, I have a baptism. The colonel, I mean, that's a blessing. That's a great thing. So praise
yeah.
God for that.
So, but that brings up an interesting point that I think Aaron in the chat is zeroing in on. He says too much focus on policy, less focus on the practicality of the gospel. He restated it later. He said, "I noticed that there was a lot of policy, but what about the practicality of the gospel?" And I think that too. So first of all, it is a policy meeting. That's the point of the general
Hmm.
conference.
Hmm.
It's not in essence about the practicality. The reason that they bring everybody there is specifically to deal with policy. But here's the catch is that the policy is about the practicality of the gospel. It's setting policy that tries to make the practical execution of the mission, which is to share the gospel, just a little bit more effective and more efficient. And so
So,
I
so,
think what you showed us was a nice where those two things meet, the practicality of the gospel plus the policy.
to show some practicality, Aaron, um, prior to this section, um, there was a delegate who went to the mic and actually before they could vote the agenda, because one of the things you do at the business session is that the individuals will vote the agenda that they will deal with. So he was trying to get on the agenda the statement for the pandemic and vaccinations.
Yeah.
There was this long, almost an hour and a half of
Wow.
discussing why we need to spend time dealing with the vaccination, dealing with what's the church stance and all that. And even the president, Elder Wilson, had to come out to the mic and he said, "This is not to help. Talking about the vaccination is not going to move the agenda of the church forward." And so it's not part of this meeting. And so there was a back and forth. He made a motion. It died. The motion died. So the opportunity to talk about the vaccination did not get on the floor for the official agenda. So although there is a need for practical discussions about what's meeting the needs of the people in the local area, there was a sense that this was truly a business meeting, and that's what they came to deal with.
I'm curious,
Mm.
Rod. I missed that part of the discussion. What was that motion intending to do with as far as the vaccination was concerned? Were they wanting
He
to? I
he
don't know. Were
he wanted the church to come out and say whether we support vaccination or we don't support it. Although the church has made a statement on vaccinations, but it was prior to COVID. So here was a situation where because of what was happening with COVID and the way the vaccine so quickly came on the scene, and people weren't sure whether some people considered it the mark of the beast. He wanted to bring all that out so that we could make a definite statement as to what the church's stance are on the COVID-19 vaccine. But the church leadership felt that that wasn't going to move the agenda forward, so they did not touch it.
so was he
Mm.
suggesting a specific stance, or just saying let's arrive at a
No,
stance?
he was suggesting a specific stance. He
Yeah.
talked about a number of members or individuals. He had like 25,000 signatures on a petition to bring this to the general conference, but he never produced the petition, never showed the evidence, and
What
so
was the
it it,
stance?
it died. Say again.
What was the stance that he wanted the church to take?
He wanted the church to say we don't believe in the vaccination, and to step that we should not be promoting it as a church.
Yeah. That was the person bringing the motion, not
Right.
the president.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Right. So listen, there's some other things that happened too at the general conference, and they talked about this Spirit of Prophecy coordinator.
Wow. Yes.
The
Yes.
Spirit Prophecy coordinator. Yes, a lot of people chimed in on that, and just going back and forth whether it's necessary, whether it's not. That was a topic where people are still talking about the Spirit of Prophecy. By the way, during I know we're not at called convention yet, but I did go to the Spirit of Prophecy workshop, and it was very good, dealing with the various aspects of the writings of Ellen White. So the general conference session, I mean, they talk about these issues, and they bring it to the forefront, and the discussion is there. And then from that meeting, we go and leave, and we kind of put things into our local context.
So the discussion on that, along with the primacy of the Bible, this was interesting. You would think that a religious organization that the sola subscription will basically don't need a statement that says the Bible is our primacy document. But there was some conversation on the floor that detailed why we need, because they felt that the church was losing the importance of the Bible and the importance of the spirit of prophecy in its dealings over the years, as if it has drifted from the importance of those. So this general session, they wanted to bring back the importance of those two things. So thus, the spirit of prophecy coordinator at the local church.
Yes, and that was a big discussion. I talked about that. Had a discussion with a person in another side of the field about that as well, just trying to get the take on that. And one of the things that was mentioned, maybe at a conference level, might be something to think about. Where you have, my deduction for that, maybe you have a group of people coming together and talking about certain things. At the local level, there are some people that might, and with any position, right? They might abuse that position as well. And now you have the Spirit of Prophecy Police, right? And that person probably only read Steps to Christ, and that's it. And there's a whole lot of other stuff you got to read. So, it's just, hey, we're a church. We move together. We discuss things, and from these meetings, we go and we try to do what we can to put in our local context.
And the very essence of what you just shared came up on the floor. There were some
Yeah.
folks who were very concerned about the person who is now charged as the coordinator for the spirit of prophecy will use their own understanding and their own knowledge, and whether it be limited or exhaustive, their own information to kind of now police what the church ought to be doing. There was a
Right.
lot of pushback on that. There was some
Yeah.
even discussions as to possibly maybe sending them to school, maybe sending them to take a certification, so they can really get a true broad understanding and a balanced understanding of how to use the spirit of prophecy. So there was a lot of discussion about that, and it passed. There
Yeah.
is
But let me
So,
now
ask you.
in the church
so that brings
manual.
up another very interesting detail about the session that came to light during the session. And that is that when we talked about there was a lot of pushback from the floor, the majority of that pushback came from delegates who were in North America and in Europe.
Mhm,
And it was interesting to note that 45% of the delegates at this general conference session came from the continent of Africa.
mhm.
Right.
North America made up only 6% of the delegates at the general conference session. So if we're assuming that North America votes as a block, and it doesn't, but if just to assume that they did, like everybody in all of the delegates from North America were always going to vote the same way on every issue, then even if that were true, we would only have North America would only have 6% of that vote, whereas
Right.
Africa and delegates are chosen by membership. So,
Mhm.
did I say that right? Let me make that clearer. It's a representative thing. So the more
Right.
members you have, the more delegates you have. that suggests that North America, compared to Africa and South American division, um, those places had way more delegates than North America did, and so North America could fuss and create all the arguments that they wanted. But if those were at least anywhere close to being monolithic votes, um, 6 to 45.
And then listen, Pastor Paul, if you brought Europe with North American division, I think you have two, 2%. So 8% of the 8%. But this brings up another interesting observation. And the world church, again, there are more people from the continent of Africa who are part of the world church than any other place. But when I look at the top leaders of the church, it doesn't reflect that. When I look at those top leaders. So, I'm just observing. Hey, listen, I'm observing. And I think that has to be addressed, people that they're representing as much as you possibly can, because we're a world church. So that's one thing that I think they probably need to look at, or we probably need to look at as time
But
goes on.
so I want to get back a little bit to the spirit of prophecy um, at the local church level. What is interesting is
Roger wants to.
that
He wants to do.
yeah, that might be the position I maybe asked to do. But what was interesting about that is, as I was talking to some of the administrators who were listening, who were there, because you didn't really get a lot of people who other than delegates. So you're talking to the administrators, you're talking to members who are there just for the business session. A lot of them, 2/3 of them that came to the microphone were against the spirit of prophecy coordinator at the local church. But when you went to vote, 2/3 were for it.
Right.
It was interesting that those who spoke were against it. Most of those who spoke were against it, but those who voted were for it. And it just leads you to know that although there's a lot of conversation going at, it's the vote that counts. It's the vote that counts.
Here's something that I've been thinking about too, Pastor Wade. If this was brought up during the time that Ellen White was alive, would she be for we call it the spirit of prophecy coordinator? Is it the gift of prophecy or the spirit of prophecy?
Spirit of prophecy.
Spirit of prophecy writings coordinator is the official title. Spirit of prophecy writings coordinator.
Right. Yeah, the spirit of prophecy writings coordinator. So if this was brought up when Ellen White was alive, would she be for it? That's something that I would love to research more and see. But again, and I'm reading it here, and it's right there on our website. Oh no, this website here, the General Conference website. No, it's the Adventist News Network website, and it tells you the job of the Spirit of Prophecy Writings Coordinator. And what they're saying is, let me come down here, the job of the coordinator, there you go, it has a responsibility of promoting the importance and right use of the Spirit of Prophecy writings in collaboration with the Publishing Ministries Coordinator. So this is a collaborative thing, right? So
it is, but it also brings up another side of the coin jumped up in this discussion. If we are now saying there needs to be a spirit of prophecy coordinator, writings coordinator, what does that say about our understanding of the Bible? And so there was a discussion on the floor that maybe we need to look at a Bible reading coordinator for the local church.
That came up a lot on the floor. It came up a lot on social media, because I think a lot of people took that as a slight or a swipe at Scripture,
Yes.
almost as if we were elevating the writings of Ellen White over the Bible. Now, I didn't take it that way at all. I thought it was a huge stretch to try to do that, particularly when you read what you just read, Dr. Henry, the job description. When you look at the writings of Ellen White herself and in some of the sermons and stuff that she preached, you note that she did a lot of that herself, talking about the importance of the testimonies and trying to make sure that people understood how to use them correctly. Um, and so I think that she herself spent a lot of time trying to make sure that people understood those two things, the importance of it and how to use them correctly, not to have
Mhm.
it supersede scripture or replace scripture and things like that. So I think that it is, and I think all of us can admit that there are already a whole lot of people who do not know how to use the writings of Ellen White properly, and there needs to be some education on that. Um, and then I think on conversely, there's also a lot of people who just do not understand the importance and the gift of what we have in the writings of Ellen White. But I would like to make this point. If I had the issue that I had, the biggest issue that I have with that, what we voted at that general conference over this issue was it sounds like we were, and I'm gonna get into trouble here with somebody, but it sounds like we were trying to make the writings of Ellen White the sole voice of the spirit of prophecy.
Come on
And
now.
I
Mm.
just don't think that's I don't think that's biblically accurate. I think that Ellen White had the gift of prophecy, but
Right.
she in herself does
Isn't
not define the totality of the spirit of prophecy that John was shown would be an identifying mark of those that last day church. They keep the commandments of God, have the testimony of Jesus Christ, which is the spirit of prophecy. That was a characterization of a group of people at the end of time, not just an identifier for one individual. And I think that's
listen.
where, yeah,
Yeah, I see a show coming up, brethren, about the writings of Ellen White. I see a show
yeah,
coming up, man.
yeah,
Maybe in the future
yeah,
we need to bring in the director of the Ellen White estate or something like that, and bring in some other. Dennis Fortin has some good stuff on the Ellen White's writings too. But I think you made a good point. You
Hey,
know,
So
that's
so so
yes.
so you brought up you
Theology shows, and we haven't really spent much time or any time dealing with theology. This will be interesting.
yes.
but what you just shared there is something that even prior to my going to Oakwood for school for theology, all I heard all my life was spirit of prophecy. We really didn't hear a lot of Bible unless you were doing a Bible story. But
Uh-huh.
you heard this is what Ellen White says. This is how Ellen White explains it. And it really turns a lot of people off. As if
Right.
you're like, well, what's the sense of the Bible if you just need the spirit of prophecy? But when I
Right.
went to Oakwood, there was a class called the gift of prophecy. And I
Yeah,
have to be honest with you, that I thank God for that understanding that was given
yeah.
to me in school, which then
Yes.
gave me a better understanding of the spirit of prophecy. And I
Listen.
wish every member had that opportunity to take that
Yes.
class.
Yes, yes, Pastor Wade, you are exactly right. In fact, not
That's
only
good.
at Oakwood but at Andrews University. Oh my!
Yeah,
When we took that Gift of Prophecy class, Roger Kuhn, and
Mhm.
and just going into the writings and giving a true perspective of the writings of Ellen White was good. I was going to ask one more question. I know maybe some other people are going to chime in a little bit, and then we'll move on
and
to something else. But
Joel asked a question that I
what
don't want to get too far foot front. So Joel, we didn't forget you. We're coming back to you on that question about delegates.
Okay. And listen, there's another question too. So we have a Spirit of Prophecy coordinator. Does that include the writings of William Foy as well? I mean, do we have to go back
See,
and
and
look at William?
well, see, that's my point about the name. I don't like prophecy. Jeremiah had the
Mm,
spirit of prophecy. Isaiah had the
yes.
spirit of prophecy. Jeremiah
Yes,
had the
yes.
spirit of prophecy. All of those things were prophetic voices that were speaking to the people of God, both in their time and in our time.
Right.
Yes.
And so I just, yeah. So, but Joel, so anybody want to take Joel's question? He was asking who
Let
are
me say,
delegates at large. He was talking about,
So Joel, the delegates. So what happens? Matter of fact, I have a little cheat sheet here. Um, who are the delegates to the General Conference session? Well, each conference, as we've shared, each you know, we got to remember this. This is the part that sometimes blow our minds. The conferences make the churches make up the constituents for conference session, and then the conferences make up the constituents for the union session, and so for the union to the division. What is interesting is that at the union is who makes up the delegates for the general conference.
Okay.
So it goes back to the union level where they will choose the delegates to participate at the general conference. The delegates at large are those who work for the organization at the general conference level, and even at, I think, a little bit at the division level, but I think it's mostly at the general conference level, the additional folks who make up the delegates at large. So it's not necessarily individuals who are at a local church. It's people who represent the larger organization, which is at the union level. I hope that helps you to understand that. And so when we talk about the number of people who can be a part of the delegates, it's based on membership. So based on the number of members we have in a particular union, division, those are where those numbers come together to make up the delegates for the general conference.
All right. Well, I think that kind of, time is running. I guess when we talk, time does run. I don't know if we have time to show that other clip.
I have a clip. One of the biggest things that happened at GC also was the disinviting of conference leadership to the executive committee of the GC. Let's look at this. This is Elder Bill Winston, who is the president of the South Atlantic Conference, and he shares his perspective on this situation. Here is the clip.
Yes, sir. You've been listening to the developments, you've been voting, you've been hearing the debates. Are there any developments here that you believe would be impactful in the South Atlantic Conference?
Okay, well, here's where the politics come in, and I'll start it. We took a vote today to disinvite the regional presidents and all of the other presidents around the world. Now, it's not just North America, from being a part of the General Conference Executive Committee. The money in this church doesn't come from the World Church. It doesn't come from the division. It doesn't come from the union. Money to operate this church comes from the churches through the conference. Yeah. And to disinvite the conference presidents, I think, is wrong. But I saw the vote. The vote was not close. It was understood that vote was coming, and they were prepared for the vote. But I think that was a mistake to say to those who generate tithe and offering, and those of you in this room who return tithe and offering, and then say to those entities that you can't sit with the general conference. I think that was wrong, and that was a mistake.
All right. Well, hey, that's the church has spoken. So we'll see where that leads down the road. Maybe the next GC there might be a change. But Elder, share.
Did he hold back? Did he hold back?
Oh, boy.
Hey, listen.
All right,
but
so
look,
I'm going to do
this. You want to do it? Go ahead, Pastor Paul. Go ahead.
I'm going to poke the bear right quick. I'm going to poke the bear. So we're saying that we think we ought to have more right than everybody else because we have more money than everybody else?
Well, I don't think that's what he was saying in terms of. I don't think he was saying that he feels that he had more right, but we got to be honest. Here are the individuals who make it happen, and they have been invited to be a part of the meeting. Now, granted, conference presidents they don't have vote, but they do have voice. And so when the conference president is sitting in the meeting and hearing it firsthand and has an opportunity to shape the discussion, yeah, you feel you're being represented. there at that meeting. Now all of a sudden, now you're in the dark.
Okay, so I want to be clear though. Just this is for
Paul, I was going to say, Pastor Paul, what was the actual vote now? What was that vote? Or what was that?
Hold on. Before we do that, he said, he used the word, he said regional conference presidents, but then he said all over. So just for clarification, right. Was he saying that regional conference presidents have been disinvited? Or is it was he using all region and just saying
all conference presidents?
Right, and that's the point that I was making, Pastor Paul. I was saying, what was that vote? So he's saying all of the conferences, right, are invited now. Right? Is what happened?
So you remembered I shared earlier that this is the executive committee of the General Conference. And so of the executive committee of General Conference, who makes up those players in that group? It will obviously be members of the unions and divisions who will represent that situation, institutions. And so not necessarily conference leaderships. So here now all the conference leaderships they're not being invited to the executive committee of the General Conference.
Here's the thing. It's not a slight against North America then.
No, it's for everybody, I think.
All of the conferences all over the world. So that's not really anything. It made it sound like, how he said it made it sound like it was a slight or something that was directed at North America. But if they said no conference president from anywhere in the world.
Here's the thing that I would say. I would say this. First of all, we have a system. When we first begun the system, and this is kind of like my hobby horse here. The General Conference, when you talk about the North American division, Inter-American division, that's the General Conference operating on that region of the world, right? And so with any issues, anything, is the General Conference operating on that side of the world. But now I'm in North American division. They're their own structure. This is actually a new structure to our church, really. Because we'll continue to operate, divisions continue to operate, divisions could do something different than what we're doing. So it's kind of like a separate thing. If the money is generated from these conferences, generated from the churches, for us not to be, when I say us, conferences not to be at the table, they may not be voting people, but just to hear what's going on, I think is something that is holding back the conferences from getting the information that is brought to the General Conference. They're not voting, they're there though, but they're listening to what's happening, they're listening to the conversation. I think it's a good thing for the conferences to be there at the table. If the conferences ever said, hey, listen, we're not going to give anymore, right? We're going to, there goes all the other entities, right? So, I don't know.
I in our audience, we may be well in the weeds on this. However, I am curious as to what was the reason, what was the rationale, or if there was one given. Was it that it's expensive to bring all these presidents to the meeting?
There was not one given. No, there's no expense because it's the local conference that will cover that expense. But I believe what I've heard on the ground. So this is not an official statement. This is not coming from leadership at the front. There was a connection. I think you tapped into it there, Pastor Paul. There was a connection with this new concept of parity, of everybody on the same level playing field. That this conversation may have been birthed, and all of a sudden now, this was a way of trying to show that we're fair across the board. I don't know. But again, as it was shared in here, I think Pastor Winston may have been speaking from his perspective as a regional conference president. He did quickly shift it and share it across the board, but it's still a situation where the local church or the local conference leadership, the main area in which we connect with the local church, no longer has a voice at the highest level of our church.
Well, whatever it is, it looks like we got Colleen out there ready. I mean, who is it? Carlene ready to take her heels off and roll up her sleeves. She talking about revolution and stuff. We got to.
Okay. So listen, so General Conference, took place, and it's a 3-year term, and that's the next General Conference is gonna be where passed away. Do they have the place? I think
The
it's in St.
place for the
Louis.
next general conference is going to be, drum roll please, St. Louis,
Same place.
Missouri.
All right. So
And the only reason that is happening is because, as you know, we were to be in Indianapolis in 2020.
yeah,
When COVID hit, we couldn't do it. They looked for another date in Indianapolis. They couldn't find another date because these events are booked 4 or 5 years out, almost 10 years out. And so St. Louis said, we can take you in 2022. So that's what happened. And then St. Louis was already chosen for 2025. So it's
okay.
it's just allowing
Got
us
it.
to go right back on where we were supposed to be.
All right.
So on the heels of General Conference, then
Boom.
we had another convention. Actually, no, between that, wait a minute, between that, Pastor Paul, we were at a camp meeting service.
That's right. That's right. Camp meeting, South Central Conference camp meeting at Oakwood University. That was an awesome experience being there. Now, okay, let's set this up, right? So it was about 11 months ago. We did a show with Benjamin Jones, who was Ben Jones, president of South Central Conference, and Alvin Kibble.
Kibble,
And
yes,
that discussion was about camp meeting, what
yes.
post-pandemic camp meeting would look like. If you missed that edition of Pastors Roundtable, maybe we can link it, TJ, in the chat. But it was a fascinating discussion with those two gentlemen that took us back and walked us down, the history of camp meeting. We heard some very engaging stories about what camp meeting used to be like for them
Mhm.
personally, the impact that camp meetings had. And then we foraged into the speculative realm of what camp meeting was going to look like at the end of this pandemic, or once we started being in person again. And at the end of that show, Pastor Jones said, I don't know if that was on air or off air. I think it was probably off air. He said, look, when I do camp meet again, we're back in person. I want you guys to come and to be a part of that. And he followed up. He followed through. And
Well,
especially now that he had a new communications director in Roger Wade, made sure that
Pastor,
he followed through.
Pastor Wade
And
was, listen, Pastor Wade was critically involved in that whole setup. So my hand goes out to Pastor Wade, man, and his vision to get this thing going. So go ahead, Pastor Paul. Didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
yeah. So what we didn't do a regular pastors roundtable there, but this was the first time, Dr. Henry, because where we grew up. We grew up in Southeastern Conference, going to Southeastern Conference camp meeting, and we do camp meeting out in the sticks.
Right.
Like snakes
Yeah.
and people who want to be nice call them what's the road that bougie people call roaches?
Oh,
uh
palmetto bugs. Palmetto bugs.
Palmetto bug. Yeah, palmetto bug. It's a roach. It's a cockroach.
Yeah.
But we're out in these little tiny little rooms, huts. I had one. I won't call his name, but I had one preacher who had come,
Stop it.
spent some time in Africa, and he came to Southeastern Conference camp meeting, and he looked out across the lake and saw all the cabins, and he said, man, I've been to some villages in Africa that look just like this.
And let me say this. Now this is before. This is before. This is a long time ago, y'all. So I'm not in the conference, but it's different now.
I'm just saying, we used to
It's
walk in
different
the
now.
sand,
It's different
in
now.
the heat, in the rain. It was that was real camp meeting, and
Back in the
and
day,
so
yeah.
but South Central Conference camp meeting, there is no campground.
Right.
There is no sand. There are no palmetto bugs. It's on the campus of
Well,
Oakwood
well, we can't say
University.
there's no palmetto bugs now because they, palmetto
Yeah,
bugs show up.
we lived in the dorms there, so yeah. But we got
But
state. This is state of the art facilities,
yeah,
buildings,
yeah.
big old jumbo screen in the auditorium, LED screen, all this kind of stuff. So it didn't quite have the same feel and flair that I was used to or to associate with camp meeting. But oh man, the Spirit of God, man. Spirit of God will fall on the dust in Hawthorne just as powerfully as it fell in the halls there at Oakwood University.
And
Um,
Pastor Paul, as you're setting up, going to what happened at South Central, one of the things that I think would be an interesting conversation is, and we're talking about the future of camp meeting,
mhm.
but camp meeting as we know it, like the tent idea, the using the facility once or twice a year, and then the people that come to camp meeting and are able to sacrifice that time. Are they going to continue to do that? Are they passing down that tradition? And I think that the conferences that have these campgrounds, and I know they're probably thinking about that and looking into it, but that is going to be something that has to be dealt with in the near future. Because if
Yeah,
it's not, then I think that type of camp meeting is going to be in trouble. So on the
yeah,
heels of that, we were at Oakwood University, and go
So
ahead.
you brought a very good point there in terms of the future of camp meeting. Although South Central Conference, and I have to be honest with you, they have looked for a campground, have not been able to find a good campground
really.
that
Hmm.
was cost effective to do something so that they could have a camp meeting there. Um, this concept that we did at Oakwood's Church for camp meeting is kind of meeting the needs of camp meeting now, because if we didn't show up to camp meeting, you still had an opportunity to get on the screen and feel the power of camp meeting
Yeah,
there. I want you to know that I couldn't make it down there to be with y'all, but I sure got up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get the early morning service. I was there for the evening service. It was still a sense of the preaching, the information that was shared through the streams was still there, and still I still enjoyed it.
Right, right. It was amazing, amazing camp meeting experience. So, man, Pastor Benjamin Jones. Wow. I mean,
yeah,
listen, this was my first time really interacting with him, and let me tell you, what a man of God. And
yeah.
his wonderful wife. Let me tell you something. At camp meeting there after the Sabbath service, his wife came over, man, and just talked with me and so forth. And I said, "This is a wonderful woman." Just to, because sometimes you really don't get that. You really don't get. You go and you do stuff, and sometimes the spouse, whether it's the wife or the husband, doesn't really come and talk. But for her just to just extend that hand to me, knowing that I was new here, I thought that was great. Pastor Benjamin Jones, that camp
Oh,
meeting, I think was awesome.
wait, hold up, stop the
It was
press.
awesome. It was awesome.
You you're new here. You're new in South Central. Is that what I
Well,
just heard? Is that an announcement? Is
okay,
that
okay. I do have a connection with South Central Conference, Oakwood University. so, so Pastor Paul, listen, we were there. We had to get up, early. Praise God, it was Central Time and not Eastern Time, right? Although I
praise the
would have
Lord?
been fine, but we had to
Yes,
get up early. We did some kind of talking about the show, not the show, but talking about the program throughout the day. But we were able to have some interviews throughout the
right.
day.
Some that have
And
not aired yet.
right, right. So oh man, the time is 5:14, y'all. I don't know.
Yeah,
Are we
we
gonna be able to show a little piece of what we talked
I
about with?
I have a clip prepped for the interview you had with Jesse Wilson.
Can we play just a tiny bit of that?
We can
A little.
we can definitely play that. Let's play a little bit of this Jesse Wilson clip.
this is
Yes.
brand new.
I
Nobody's
just flew back from California, and I noticed the interactions between stewards and passengers to be a little bit more tense than it once was. The reports we see on YouTube of passengers attacking passengers and whatever. I mean, we live in an evil age, but this is crazy, man.
Yeah.
I'm literally seeing people drive up to the McDonald's window, get into an argument with them, and jump through the window. I'm like, man, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And the point is, things have always been bad. They've gotten progressively worse. But the pandemic has traumatized people to the extent that we've not been traumatized before. And we are not immune to it in the local church. So your jobs are going to be even more difficult.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. I heard a lot of laughing going on. Some people are having fun, man. I'm hearing a lot of laughing and joyous. But that's a blessing, man. It's the Sabbath. You got to be happy, right?
Was that in the recording, or was that one of us?
No,
I think it's one of y'all, man.
Maybe my open mic where I am here at a friend's house. But what Jesse was talking about was very true, in light of the fact that our jobs are going to be different, or pastors are going to have a difficulty because of what's happening in society.
Yeah. And can I say this? Dr. Jesse Wilson, I just want to put a plug in for him. What I appreciate about Dr. Wilson is that he's relevant, he's real, he has the heart of the pastors, and he's giving us information that is going to help us and support us. You know, sometimes you have people, and I'm gonna throw it out there. Maybe Pastor Bob, maybe I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, right? I'm taking away your turn. But sometimes we have folk who haven't pastored in years. Like,
Don't
years.
call no names. Okay.
I'm not calling anything. I'm not calling anything. But years. I'm not talking about 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And they come in and they tell us, this is how you're supposed to pastor. And it's kind of like it's far removed, right? But with Dr. Jesse Wilson, I know he's their professor, he's not pastoring now, but the way that he presents his stuff, the way that he upholds the pastors, it's as if he is walking right beside us, you know? And that's what I appreciate about people, about Dr. Jesse Wilson and people like that.
Dr. Wilson is walking alongside the pastors.
Yes.
He's there at the conventions. He goes to. He's doing an evangelistic meeting right now online. He's looking at what ways he can encourage pastors, and so I also join you in appreciating what he does for ministry, for the pastoral ministry, for the church ministry, the local church ministry there in this division around this world. He does a tremendous, phenomenal job.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So,
he is I think a proficient student of pastoral ministry. So even though he's a teacher, you can sense by just spending a little time with him that he's constantly studying, reading, watching, trying to learn, trying to figure out, more. And you may not always agree with everybody on everything, but there's something that I think all of us can appreciate about the desire to explore, the desire to want to learn more, the desire to get it right. And that's something that I think all of us we appreciate about Dr. Wilson.
Yeah, and Pastor Ball, you just hit something right there before. I know we're going to go to the called convention, but you just hit something right there. And Pastor, will you chime in on that as well? If you are presenting and take this to another level, if you're presenting, if you're trying to encourage the pastors and you have not pastored for a while, I mean, research is important. Talking to pastors that are actively pastoring, right? I mean, people who have the 2 and 3 church district, people talking with them, getting a feel for what's happening in the field. So then when you present, now you have the heart of the pastor, and you can balance that with your experience. But if you just go on your experience, your 45-year-old experience, 45 years ago experience, I should say, not 45, but 45 years ago experience, things are different now. They're different. I had a conversation with some administrators at a certain place, and the administrator was agreeing with what I'm saying. He said, listen, I went back to pastoring after not pastoring for a while. I thought that things were going to be, the same as if when I left it, but when I came back, it was totally different. A lot of it's more difficult now, which because of time, it's that's the time we live in. So again, appreciate Dr. Wilson. I love his comments. But after that, Pastor Paul.
So
What a
hey,
segue! What a segue!
no, here's the
Yeah.
segue. So
Oh, go ahead.
here's the segue. There's
Yeah.
somebody else who does that well, who studies pastors and pastoring and is interested in pastors, and that's
Yes.
Dr. Ivan Williams.
Let's talk about that. Yes.
Yes.
North American Division Ministerial Director. Ivan is comes across as a consummate student of pastors and pastoring. He also comes alongside pastors. He's got a division seat, but he pulled this thing together last week. The call
Yes.
for pastors and their families.
Yes.
He has the heart of a pastor. He's been listening. He's been watching. Some of the things, Dion, that we talked about with Dr. Wilson about how many young pastors in Adventism are wanting and willing to walk away from pastoral ministry
Right.
for several reasons. One of them simply being just the pressure, the stresses that come with that. When we sat with Ivan Williams and we got to open part of that called convention in the Tech Lab with a pastors roundtable interview with Dr. We asked him that question, and he said, "Look, and this is the thing that got me. He said, for the pastors that decided to leave, we sat down and talked with them." I knew enough right there about Ivan Williams.
That's right. And what a convention it was.
Yes, pastors. That he was not willing, as a North American Division Ministerial Director. And for those of you who don't know, in a local conference, a Ministerial Director is what we used to say was he is the pastor or she is the pastor for the pastors.
For the pastor.
Pastor. But Ivan was not willing to just simply let pastors walk away from ministry and just say, "All right, peace. Y'all, it was nice knowing you." He wanted to go and find out from them, not what they heard or what other people said, but to find out directly from them, what could we have done better? What were some of the issues that led to this? And that to be intentional about gathering and chronicling that information in order to make what we do as a professional ministry system to make it better. I have mad respect for Dr. Williams and what he's doing at that level.
So how he corralled this called meeting was to speak on the issue of resiliency. Coming out of the pandemic, dealing with the pressures of ministry, there is a certain resiliency that was needed of the pastorate, and Paul was able to literally touch exactly what that was, and every pastor that I've talked to have said they were truly blessed by their experience there in Lexington.
Do we have a clip on that? Do we have any clips on?
We don't have a clip on that one because we were so involved. I have to be honest with you. I did not get the same experience a lot of pastors have gotten because I worked with the pastors' kids. There was this was amazing. This event did three things. It connected the pastor, ministry, and family together.
Yes.
And so there was a meeting that was just geared for pastors' kids. There was a part that was with the teens, and there were a part for the children. So the children's ministries for North American Division sponsored the meeting for the kids. The youth ministries did it for the teens, and that's who I worked with. We called it the Pastors PK Journey, and they provided opportunities for pastors' kids to be in the same space, a safe space, where they talked about things that really impacted the kids, and obviously the family, the pastor and the pastor's spouse. So it was a total family piece, which they showed a little bit of how Technology comes together with that. They had fitness opportunities. They even
Yeah,
gave away money
yeah. Oh,
for
yes, yes, yes.
ministry.
Pastor Paul,
They,
Pastor Wade, I was going to say, but something happened in that youth ministry context. Some people gave their life to
yes.
the Lord. I mean, can you talk about that a
Oh,
little bit?
So the speaker, who was Pastor Myron, Dr. Myron Edmonds, who is a pastor's kid himself, as he was sharing, he was very vulnerable. He shared about the rigors of growing up as a pastor's kid, and he shared to those kids. He said, "Listen, I know a lot of y'all got baptized when you were 6 and 7, and you did it because that's what you were supposed to do. But you have gone through life now, and now is an opportunity for you to make a decision for yourself." And you know, there were 30 young people who got up that Monday night and said, "I want to be baptized."
Mercy. Amen.
Made that decision on their own. And to tell you how real they were, I heard this when we went. We said we're going to have baptism Tuesday afternoon. When we went to connect with the kids to get them ready for the baptism, their parents were struggling. Their parents were saying, asking their kids, "Why are you getting baptized again? Wasn't the baptism I did for you good enough?" It was funny to hear. And then the kids turned around and told their parents, "I want to make this decision. I'm the one making this decision. I'm the one standing up." They owned it. And we were able to baptize 14 young people into their relationship, to celebrate their relationship with Jesus Christ.
Amen. Amen.
They just did it right there at the pool in the hotel.
It,
They found.
it,
Hey, listen, man. Hey,
Hey,
take me to the water, baby. Wherever
can
the
you give
water's
me
at,
a
brother.
screen right quick, Raj?
huh?
Can you give me a full screen right quick?
Sure.